Hi, I'm David Riley, and a very warm welcome to another edition of People in Politics. If you've not already done so, please subscribe to our show. I'd be very grateful. Joining me on today's show is someone who's been around Scottish politics for a very long time. He started campaigning for the Liberal Democrats as a student. He went on to work as for the party and then stood at Westminster and then latterly at Holyrood. He's held the top job in Liberal Democrats in Scotland, and I'm very looking forward to talking to today's guest, Willie Rennie. Welcome to People in Politics. Willie, thank you very much for doing this. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you.
No, it's an honour. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Not at all. Thank you. I was looking forward to talking to you because you've had a long career in Scottish politics now, and I really look forward to talking about that. And I think I'm right in saying, and you'll correct me, uh, I think it started in student politics for you, you know, paid with tech and got involved with the student union, and you were deputy president there. And so, so, so was that the start of your political consciousness or something?
Yeah, it was about that time. And I was influenced significantly by some important student leaders at that time. There was a Liverpudlian hippie, as I call him. Craig Green was the president, and he was a little bit older, not that much older than us. He was a mature student, but he had great clarity of thought, a great communication style, and revolutionized the student union, made it from a bit of a backwater into something that was central to student life. But he also challenged the leadership of the institution of the college at that point in a way that very few student leaders had done before, in a very intelligent way. And that taught me an awful lot about how you handle people, how you communicate, how you set out your ambitions and deliver them. So he was quite an important early influence in my political career, but I had been a bit involved before that. So I had joined the party probably in about 87, and Ming Campbell was the MP in my local area. So I remember the local Focus newsletter coming through the letterbox, and we were the main political party in town in North East Fife. So going to Paisley was a bit of a shock. It was quite a contrast.
Yeah, I can imagine from Strathmiglo and the quietness of Northeast Fife to Paisley.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I wouldn't say I was the only Liberal in the village, but it wasn't far off it. But we had local Liberal Democrats who were quite influential as well. So Eileen McCartan and Alan Reid were the mainstay of the local Lib Dems in Paisley. And Alan persuaded me to stand in the Foxbar by-election in 1989, which I had a lucky escape because I almost won it. And I could have ended up being the councillor for Foxbar in Paisley. I got beat by, and it's to my eternal shame, I got beat by Sandra White, who subsequently became an SNP MSP. But also my other competitor was a man called Paul Mack, who turned out to be a thorn in the side of the Labour Party in Paisley for decades to come. And so it was bizarrely, it was a by-election which had the origins of an awful lot of dissent elsewhere in Scottish politics.
Yeah. You mentioned the Labour Party there, and presumably, this is back in the 80s. And Labour were a huge force in Scotland, much bigger than they are now. And they would have been, particularly in the West, over that time. But there's something about the Lib Dems that you felt more affinity toward. And can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, the Labour Party was never really a thing in North East Fife. It wasn't a strong force, but also the the complacent, the the arrogant approach from the Labour Party at that time just never appealed to me. But all the factionalism as well. So there was all these different groups who were always arguing with each other. It was either Tommy Sheridan's militant or whether it was the mainstream more, is it Knowles? I think it was the student grouping at the time, the Labour establishment, who ran an awful lot of councils who just thought everybody else was completely irrelevant and not worth listening to. So I was never attracted to it. It was quite a, re, a not repulsive, but it did repel my kind of politics, which was much more about unity and partnership, rejecting division, going for more of a centre ground, which I still hold to quite strongly, more of a pragmatic politics. I could never get the division and the bitterness, which was which had engulfed the Labour Party at the time. And I'd never been attracted to the SNP either. I couldn't understand. I thought it was a thing for cranks, was being part of the SNP. Why would you be in favour of independence? Why did you think that Scotland was the only thing that really counted? I was a much more of an internationalist. And people like, Shirley Williams, and David Steele, and slightly later on Paddy Ashton were, really quite inspiring in their moderation
Yeah.
and their language and their unity and their internationalism. That was my politics. I was never into the division and the bitterness of the Labour Party, and I was never into the isolationism of the SNP. And I was certainly not a Tory.
I know, it's okay. That's good. You mentioned the bitterness and division, but I think there's a bit of irony now that I think in the great Scottish politics is engulfed in bitterness and
Yeah.
division, and that's staying from 2014, and it's never gone away since then. And if anything, it's got worse, and there's no sign of it abating or when I felt like that.
I think that's right. I mean, I think Anis Sarwar is doing a pretty good job at trying to
Yeah.
reach out and bring things back together and say, whatever your views are on independence, surely we can agree on some other things. And I think that was quite a smart tactic. And Alex Cole-Hamilton has an element of that in his contributions as well. So whilst the SNP and the Conservatives in some ways are keen to keep on the argument because that's how they thrive. It's often polar, the polar opposites are great
Yeah.
drivers of motivation of political activists. But I think the kind of more centrist unity type approach that's characterized by Anis and Alex, I think will be increasingly attractive to people. And I think that's partly why both of our parties had an increase in the number of seats at the last election, was because of that different approach. People have had enough of the extreme reaching for easy solutions. So I'm hoping that that's going to increase over the coming years.
Yeah, it would be nice if it increased and took some of the toxicity, the division out. And of course, the Liberal Democrats were part of the first coalition in Scotland. And that was before the SNP really took grip. But I'm right in saying, like, but before that, you had stood at Westminster and you sat in a seat at Westminster for, was it one term?
Yeah. So I won what we call a famous by-election in Dunfermline in 2006, where part of what I described earlier on about the kind of the arrogant Labour Party that was complacent really got their comeuppance that day because we came from way behind. Just in second place we were, just ahead of the SNP, and we went on to win it, which nobody expected to happen because the party was bedeviled by scandals at the time. And so, but we won the by-election, and I think that was probably the first indication that people were really fed up with that Labour Party that just assumed that it was had the right to rule in the same way the Conservatives think they've got a right to rule at Westminster. There was the same feeling about the Labour Party here. So, but I drew great experience from my time at Westminster, mixing with some great characters, and I learned the craft of public speaking. It's a hard way to learn the craft of public speaking, uh, but but being
That's,
howled at from all sides is character forming, and it helped me a great deal when I was howled at by the nationalists when I came to the Scottish Parliament. Um, but yeah, I mean, great experiences. Visited from through the Defence Committee, which I was a member. We went to Afghanistan and Iraq. We did a lot of the European countries, visiting on our NATO and Europe inquiries. Went to the United States of America. It didn't quite make it to China, which they had planned to do, but we didn't quite do that. But yeah, so that was that again, just in part living up to the role, knowing that you had the right to ask, even though I was Willie Faithrath-Miglo, I still had the right to ask questions, of the senators that we met
wow.
in the United States, that I've got as much of a place in that committee as anybody else. And through that, I learned an awful lot more about just about how to handle myself. And it was a great experience. And again, that helped when I came to the Scottish Parliament about not being cowed by, a huge nationalist majority, because I got elected in 2011 and the SNP had just swept to a majority that nobody had really expected would ever happen in the Scottish Parliament. So again, I wasn't going to be cowed by these people. So yeah, all of that helped greatly. Unfortunately, the people in Dunfermline didn't have that much confidence in me that they chose not to re-elect me in 2010, but which was a devastating blow because I
Yeah,
loved the place. I think Dunfermline, I like to think I made a bit of a difference there and tried to help lots of people. But unfortunately, the Labour Party managed to take it back. But
yeah. So,
yeah,
so did you make a decision to focus on the Scottish Parliament, or if you were given a choice, would you stay at Westminster? Because you talk about these amazing uh, trips and meetings of people that you met and the way that shapes you and obviously that's not gonna happen in the Scottish. So
but I was always, I mean, to be frank, I felt at that point that my time in politics wasn't finished. I had a choice to make. I could go off and do something else, or I could continue in politics. And I decided my time wasn't done, and I would regret it if I didn't carry on and try and make a bigger impact in Scottish politics. So some encouraged me to stand for Holyrood, and um, we had a pretty devastating election at that point, and I ended up being leader a few weeks later. So but it was based on the fact that I didn't think my time was finished, and I had a lot more to offer, and the party bluntly needed, I think, a bit of support at that point, and I was keen to do that because I had given many years already to the party, and support down in the southwest in Cornwall and Devon, as well as various by-elections across the rest of the UK. So I'd already committed a lot, and I felt it probably needed support at this point. So that's why I stepped forward again. But I've never been somebody who thought that Holyrood was more important than Westminster or Westminster more important than Holyrood. I know that's been at the heart of an awful lot of divisions within political groupings, but I've never had that bias. I think it's just an honour to be in any of these parliaments, and you
Yeah,
should
no,
seize your opportunity when it comes.
amazing. Yeah, amazing experience.
Yeah,
And excuse me.
that's all right.
The parties in when the party did pretty well at Westminster this year, and obviously we hope that there'll be some sort of a resurgence and a mirroring at the next holiday elections. Isn't that could happen?
Yes, I do. Partly because I think the trend that I described earlier on about people fed up with reaching for the extremes and the constant battles and divisions, I think people are turning against that. And I think there'll be more support for the Liberal Democrats. I probably think Labour will probably do quite well as well. I think we can gain seats on the list, also in places like the Highlands, where we did exceptionally well this time.
Yeah,
And so I think all of that will is possible, but we probably need to up our game a bit. I think we need to work even harder because it's easy to criticise governments. It's much more difficult, as Keir Starmer has found, to take charge, and therefore working up our platform to developing an appealing set of policies that
yeah,
people are attracted to is what we need to do now. And I'm working with Alex Cole-Hamilton to make sure that that happens because we can't just take it for granted. You can't just coast off other people's misfortune.
no,
It's
no.
definitely the case, that the Conservatives and the SNP are really struggling after years of being in power, and people are hunting for change, but we can't assume that that would come. So therefore, we need to up our game and improve our platform so it's more appealing.
Yeah, and as you say, the Liberal Democrats offer somewhat of a middle ground, and I think that become more popular because I think over the last, particularly the last 4 or 5 years, we seem to become more more polarized and more extremes things and I think the Conservatives are about to elect an even further right wing leader to that trend of going to more extremes, further to the left, further to the right, and it's not over.
Yeah,
It's gonna continue for them
I would
forever.
think so. And there's a lot of people who are what I would call soft conservatives, people who are moderates, people who perhaps have voted for people like Ruth Davidson in the past, would never really be attracted to the Labour Party or the SNP, but looking for an alternative political home. And
Yeah.
I think we are, we offer them a place. And I suppose it's a direct appeal to them over the next period just to reflect where they want to place their support. And they should look again at the Liberal Democrats because we're a much stronger force. We're growing and we've got a great set of policies, particularly in health and social care, where Ed Davies been particularly strong. Mental health, where I had a great affinity with. It was really important to get extra investment into mental health because it's holding so many people back, making sure that early years education works much more effectively, because that's a great way of lifting people up. The reform of the education system
Yeah.
itself, meeting our climate change obligations, but also just fixing our relationship with Europe and the rest of the UK, having a much more mature, open relationship is what I think we should be aiming for.
I agree. I think I hope they can fix the relationship with the EU and it's not broken. And one thing that I'm passionate is is about mental health and social care. And like David, on a mission to try and fix that, which is terrific, but it's not gonna be quick, it's not gonna be easy. I think Keir Starmer's discovering that's a really difficult thing.
But what's frustrating, though, particularly in Scottish politics, there's a greater focus on how things look than how things actually are. So they're pursuing this National Care Service bill that's really just about looking as if something is being done
That's right, yeah.
rather than actually fixing the fundamentals. The fundamentals are that we haven't been paying social care workers enough for years.
No,
And now when we've got a shortage of workers, it's no surprise they're going somewhere else for better paid jobs.
yeah,
So we have been complacent with social care for years, and that's where the fundamentals need. If we can get the workforce, the good workforce, stabilize it, then we've got a better chance of having easier access from health into social care, which releases pressure on the hospitals. I mean, we've heard the story before. We know that that's what we need to do. But instead, we focus on a structural solution by creating
yeah.
some new monolith that's driven by ministers at the centre. That's not going to sort it. And that's the frustration, is that so much energy is put into things that just will not deliver the change. Even if they succeed in creating this institution, I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference.
No, I won't because yeah, Um, I think actually how much money are they going to burn by setting up the institution alone? And just setting up won't change anything. I think the problem with social care is it's not great work, and they get pretty poor shift patterns. They get pretty poor. It's pretty grotty work for grotty money, and that's not going to change by setting up this institution. But it's quite hard to see how they could change it without pouring millions of pounds into it out of
The,
the pay.
the only thing that I would disagree with you on that is that I don't think it's grotty work. I mean,
Yeah,
it's hard, it's
yeah,
physical. I
yeah.
get that. But actually, the privilege, the honor of being able to help somebody in their final years is a great privilege, and many people find great kind of comfort in providing that support. But equally, we should pay them an appropriate wage rather than feeling it's the bottom of the rung of the ladder. It needs to be treated. But I mean, I've met many social carers who provide an excellent, home care. That service that's provided is exceptional. People really care for their clients,
Yeah.
and that's something we should celebrate, really.
Yeah, perhaps that was the wrong.
No, no,
Was the
no, I
wrong.
understand it. So it's not an easy job.
It's the
It's
wrong
not an
thing.
easy job.
I would like to think I'm feeling that my mum's in a care home and she's got acute dementia and it's very difficult. But I do recommend the staff are terrific
Yeah,
and they're totally dedicated to looking after her. And they must have the patience of angels.
that's it. Yeah.
And but I wouldn't like to do that. Um, and I see is it a similar situation the way that the Scottish government has set up the social security Scotland, because presumably that must have cost a lot of money again to look different, again to have our own separate Scottish and and was that a good use of money?
I, it, I think it probably was, and I'll give credit to the Scottish government on this. I think they have made a substantial change in the investment for Social Security. I mean, the child payment is significant. The different approach to treating clients, I think, is a good thing. I think they've done they've done a lot, they've made a lot of changes that have been appreciated by clients, and I'm not going to deny that. There are still problems. They were way behind on the adult disability payment timelines,
Yeah.
the child payment. Um, it's a significant sum of money, and my main criticism from them there is that there is a little point in allocating the funds if they haven't really worked out how they're paying for it longer term. And I think that's certainly true. I think the finances in the Scottish Parliament are not sustainable. And so that's probably my main criticism. But I think they've made a lot of changes, a lot of people have welcomed through Social Security. So I probably think that is the right thing to do. And we've tried to support them on that journey. Um, I've got a lot of harsher criticisms for them in health, social care, education,
Yeah.
climate. I could long I list a long list of things where I've got harsh
Yeah.
criticisms, but I think that's probably not one of them where I would be too harsh on them. I think they've set about making that a priority. My main criticism is I'm not sure they've worked out the finances longer term.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that you right, appreciate. I'm on disability benefit. I found hard to get jobs, and it was about a fortnight ago. But I got my letter to say that I've been swapped over to
Mm.
social security.
Yeah, there were issues about the transfer
Yeah,
um, from the Westminster system to the Scottish Parliament, and I did have a case of um, somebody had lost quite a significant sum of money because of the transfer dates and the impact of when one benefit ceased and the other one started. So there are some issues there, there's no doubt.
yeah,
And I would probably expect some of that to happen, but the government really needs to step up and repair those mistakes when they happen. But I didn't have huge numbers of those. I knew they were there, but it was not a huge number.
good. So I was gonna ask you what I suppose what keeps you there in Scottish politics because you've been there for such a long time. You've held the top job in Scottish Liberal Democrats, and Andrew is to have a lot more to do. So uh, what motivation to stay there and keep going?
That's a secret.
I think.
It's no, I've still got a lot more to do. I'm enjoying doing I'm on the education committee, so
Yeah,
I'm because I never really got the chance to be a backbencher when I joined the Scottish Parliament. I was plunged straight into leadership, and I
right.
say plunged advisedly. Um, so I was immediately into that position. But so now doing the committee work and asking questions, on all sorts of subjects is something I'm thoroughly enjoying. I I was judged by the Sun newspaper as the biggest talker in the Scottish Parliament because I had made so many interventions, which does reflect my passion for the Scottish Parliament and finding answers. So I'm enjoying that for this Parliament. Let's see what comes in the next Parliament.
That's
That's
it.
a secret.
Uh, that's it. And I've heard that you're a pretty keen runner. And that,
Yeah, I've been out this morning. I live near Kelty. I've got a hill called Benarty Hill at the back of the house. So I run up there every morning and I get up when it's dark now. Unfortunately, it's getting darker.
that's
Put my
good.
put my head torch on, get up the top of the hill. It takes about an hour and it's a great start to the day.
Yeah, it must be.
So yeah, no, I've done lots of different races. I still want to do a few more races. The beauty of getting older is that when you reach the age of 50 or 60 or whatever, you join a new age category and
Yeah.
and they have special prizes for each category. So I had a big purple patch when I turned 50. I won all these races. But the clue is to pick the most obscure races in the most far-flung parts where nobody else can go, and
It's
you've got a great
good.
chance of winning then.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, no, I couldn't do without the running.
That's good.
It's a big part of me. Yeah.
Health, physical exercise, especially, it can be done. It's like being outside and
Yeah.
doing stuff. But anyway, it's been a real pleasure talking to you, and thank you so much again for
So,
for taking the time to do this. I really enjoy meeting people like yourself and hearing about what you're studying. Yeah, I find it really interesting.
well, thanks very much, David. I really appreciate it.
That's a pleasure, thanks.
Right.
So.